Hal Benton had worked the night shift as a janitor at Stratiton Technologies for nearly 2 decades. Every evening at 10 p.m. sharp, he arrived with his lunchbox in one hand and a faded blue thermos in the other. While the rest of the city of Seattle went to sleep, Hal cleaned. He swept the polished floors of the executive lounges, emptied the trash from boardrooms, and mopped the marble hallways that tech billionaires strutted down during the day. Most of them never noticed him. They never asked his name. They just saw a mop, a uniform, and a man with gray hair. But Hal was more than that. Years ago, before life handed him the kind of curveballs no spreadsheet could model, Hal had been one of the lead systems engineers who helped build the early infrastructure of Stratiton's data core. He designed backup frameworks and tested failure response scenarios when the company was just starting out. Then his wife died in a car accident, leaving him to raise their young son, who had special needs. Hal resigned from his high-ranking position so he could care for his son during the day. The only job that fit his schedule and didn't require a fancy degree anymore was janitorial work, so he took it, quietly, without complaint, and never told anyone who he used to be. It was just past midnight when it happened. The fluorescent lights above flickered once, then twice. Hal noticed immediately. He was mopping near the server wing, a highly secured glass room with humming machines and blinking lights. He saw one of the core status monitors shift from green to orange, then to red. His eyebrows lowered. The code scrolling on the screen wasn't just an update. It was a breach, an active override hitting the company's root infrastructure, and it was happening fast. Hal stood still for a moment, remembering that line of code like an old song lyric. His muscles tensed. On the 40th floor, CEO Randall Keene was relaxing in his penthouse office, swirling a glass of whiskey and skimming investor emails, when his personal tablet started vibrating uncontrollably. Within seconds, it lit up with flashing warnings. Core breach detected, system failure imminent. A second screen on the wall did the same. Then a third. In minutes, his tech department flooded the floor. Emergency lights blinked, phones rang non-stop, and the company's digital architecture began collapsing. The firewalls were down. Backup drives were failing. Tens of millions of client records were disappearing. One by one, systems went dark. Meanwhile, Hal was already in motion. He walked quickly but calmly to the janitor's closet in sub-basement C, a forgotten corner of the building, where cleaning supplies shared space with decades-old wiring and a dusty utility workstation. He opened a hidden panel behind the racks of mop heads and brooms and uncovered a steel hatch. Inside was an old terminal, still hardwired into the foundation of Stratiton's first network. System Hal himself had written and maintained long before cloud integration became the norm. The tech staff upstairs had either forgotten it existed or didn't know it ever had. He took a breath. His fingers hovered over the keyboard, and suddenly it all came back to him. He typed fast, recalling override keys and hard-coded pathways. The screen came to life in black and green, a language no one had spoken in the company for years. The virus that had crippled Stratiton's operations was clever, designed to bypass modern firewalls and blind current protocols. But it didn't know about this buried skeleton of code locked away in analog form. Upstairs, chaos reigned. Randall barked orders. "Find out who's in the system now. Someone just accessed a legacy terminal." One of the techs looked up, confused. "That level's been closed for years. Only janitorial staff have access." Randall stared. "Then get someone down there now." But by the time the elevators reached sub-basement C, it was done. Screens on the 40th floor began turning green again, and recovery bars filled, core files reappeared. Server load stabilized. The emergency tones silenced one by one. A hush fell over the room. After 37 minutes of terror, Stratiton's entire infrastructure had rebooted, and no one upstairs had a clue who had done it. Hal leaned back in the rusted swivel chair. The room was quiet except for the old fan humming beside him. His eyes reflected lines of code, scrolling steadily toward a message at the bottom of the screen. "System restored." He exhaled slowly, then stood, brushing dust from his knees. He shut the panel, picked up his mop, and went back to cleaning, just like always. By morning, word had spread like wildfire through Stratiton's glass corridors. The catastrophic breach that nearly destroyed the company had somehow been stopped, but there was no trace in the current system logs of who had done it. Only one entry stood out, an old employee login code from 2 decades ago, linked to a name that none of the younger staff recognized. Hal Benton. The name buzzed across internal servers and staff group chats. Who was Hal Benton? Some assumed he was a ghost in the system. Others thought it was a planted alias. It wasn't until someone from Human Resources looked up his ID and realized he was still on payroll, assigned to janitorial services, that everything clicked. The man who saved Stratiton from collapse had been quietly sweeping the building for years. CEO Randall Keene stared at the HR file on his desk, speechless. Hal's original resume listed degrees from MIT and Stanford. He had held the title of Systems Architect from 1998 to 2002, then abrupt resignation. The file had no notes beyond personal circumstances. He'd rehired 3 years later as a janitor. How did no one notice this? Randall muttered. An emergency staff meeting was called. Executives and managers filled the main auditorium, but this time, the name on everyone's lips wasn't a department head or a tech genius flown in from Silicon Valley. It was Hal, the man with the mop. Randall insisted on meeting him personally. When Hal arrived that night for his usual shift, still wearing his old Stratiton jacket with duct-taped sleeves, security politely asked him to follow them upstairs. He'd never been past the 10th floor in years. Now they were taking him to the 40th. Inside the boardroom, he found Randall, several top engineers, and the CFO standing in a semicircle. They didn't look angry. They looked awestruck. "Mr. Benton," Randall began, his voice unusually calm, "I owe you more than I can say. We all do." Hal shifted uncomfortably, still holding his mop handle like a walking stick. "You saved this company," Randall continued. "How did you even know what to do?" "I recognized the breach code," Hal said quietly. "It was built off the system I designed back in the day. The new firewalls missed it because they didn't know it ever existed." The room went quiet. Randall stepped forward. "Why didn't you ever tell anyone who you were?" Hal smiled faintly. "Didn't seem to matter. My son needed me. The job fit the hours. I still cared about this place, whether I was writing code or cleaning restrooms." There was a long silence. Randall turned to the others, then back to Hal. "We'd like to formally offer you a position, Director of Legacy Systems and Resilience. You'll report directly to me, build a team, train others, and work on your terms." Hal blinked. "I haven't touched formal architecture in years." "We know," said one engineer, "but you built the bones of this place. Nobody else could have done what you did." Hal looked down at his mop, then at the view behind them, Seattle's skyline glowing in the dark. He nodded. "All right, I'll do it, but I'm keeping my night coffee spot." The room broke into soft laughter, but it was layered with respect, not amusement. In the weeks that followed, Hal's life transformed. He moved into a better home, closer to his son's special education school. The company retrofitted an office for him on the 20th floor. Every morning, he walked in wearing jeans, a flannel shirt, and the same steel-toed boots he'd used as a janitor. But his mind, still sharp, still legendary, he built a new division focused entirely on system vulnerability, blending modern tech with foundational understanding. The company's valuation rose after public news of the janitor who saved Stratiton went viral. Business leaders across the country invited him to speak, not because he was flashy, but because he reminded them of something they'd all forgotten. That quiet dedication and unseen brilliance can live in anyone. That dignity doesn't depend on titles or offices, and that sometimes the person sweeping the floors is the one who once designed the ceiling. Months later, on Employee Appreciation Day, Hal was honored with a company medal and a standing ovation. He stood at the mic, looking out at the sea of suits and young tech hopefuls. Then he said simply, Respect the ones you don't notice. They might be the ones holding your whole world together. And with that, he walked off the stage, not into retirement, but into a new beginning he had never planned for, but always deserved.